당도 이제 저기 냠내 시리 당은 저 콘트기의 유리 이미대 왔들 기니 기거래 이미대 와데는 니치랑 되바다 미디비 자와 제바 tellatene 이미대 와제네 니제 동안 tellatene 콘트기거래스 이제 당도 이게 콘트기 유리디 차거래스 제 지나다 콘트기와 이나 콘트기기 저기 세델이야 미케와 미데와 동화제가 맞지 아니 랑게 디기투에 개와디게 반냠제 아니 동화 안게게 묘하게 규칙거래스 데네자 아니 데네기 콘트기에 유 이미데 개와디 가고래스 산도시네 아니 안데네 슈가레 디마세 당아 저기 이미데와 기세 유дел이야 하는 아 저기 주교 다야게 탑시단데 주소교 다야 여바이나 안델레 미가와 제과 여마 이미데와 셈마기와 제과 여 말레스 아니 안델레야 그 기내지 주에게 탑주기네 매바이나 안치 셈미데와 제과 여 말레스 디네자 아니 판도 여 말레스 그 생각도 디고를 맞도시는 슈가로
Good evening. So we've been speaking about anger, the mind that we desperately need to abandon because of the great harm that it does. And last week we completed a period of the text where we're looking at the object upon which anger arises, which is its immediately preceding condition, is a mind of displeasure or discontent, or in the Lamaram it's translated as mental unhappiness. So when the mind moves in this negative direction towards something, from that then anger arises. And this we need to recognize and break this sequence so as not to lead to anger arising because of the harm that follows, unhappiness for ourselves now, as well as the accumulation on virtue which leads to happiness in the future. It also prevents past or previously accumulated virtue from ripening. It overwhelms that, prevents it from ripening. So therefore, we need to recognize the grave faults that anger plays, see the sequence in which anger arises, and strive in training our mind to prevent it from becoming unhappy. Because, as we saw last week, that no benefit follows from the mind being unhappy, none whatsoever. And even if one doesn't give rise to strong anger, but the mind is unhappy, no benefit follows. It's not that our problems dissipate from this. No benefit follows.
유 가네스티네 기고를 세야되다 양도 이미 되와 있는 기고 이미 되와 되다 저기 아니지게 되비게 미디비에 자와 주부 제바다 되비들에 개체받는 기고를 세신데 쉬어래 대자되는 자당 저기 양 콘트계획이 유염 다 이미 되와 유되라 안 되는 마도 개발을 쓴 거래 되네 다기 시에남라 동아 니다 직습다 민연시자 미주데 달라데레 도베소스.
So we've looked at this sequence that leads to the arisal of anger. Again, anger is a single word, but it encompasses the entire range of emotion from frustration and annoyance to rage and hatred. So this outcome of anger is immediately preceded by this mind of mental unhappiness or displeasure or discontent. And this itself comes from either the doing of what I do not wish for, so meeting an unwanted circumstance, or what we want being obstructed. So from that comes a mind of discontent, from that anger. Now we'll look at this in more detail in the 11th verse. For myself, my family and my circle of friends, suffering, contempt, being spoken to harshly, or disgrace are not what we wish for, but it is the opposite for those I dislike.
dunga sidu kasa dadam dagi shenam la sidu da da se sosara rang la ane rangi dagi she se rangi nye tisala da la dunga chungwa dunga chowa dunga chungwa ina andela tene yimitawa je tene kontra kikiri es chisan da la chowa dunga chungwa as dunga as tene nye pa sidu shenki ma nye che tongchung da nye che che pa ane cikzup sidu shenki yarira cikzupla soba sheba ina cikzup che pa ane minyen che pa minyen sidu sosulya tan minyen pa ane gyun che pa la soba tene sheba ina ane desola tene sosulya ane kari yungwa sene 아까 소리 셈마기와 제대로 고르게 돼. 되는 거래 세대 시대 차고로와 동아세 녀다 치다 직수다 미녀세. 다랑게 시에서도 랑게 시에 남라서도 랑게 분자 네 파마 대술이야 안에 동아 초와 동아 작고를 준비나 양소서 마기와 자다 되는 용거래 셈 이미 되와게 되네. 아니 녀 봐서도 대술이야 생기 녀주 제바이나 네 어니 파마는 예수랑 예 분야를 예수지 선세 되는 이미 대화게 되는 거래기거래서 아직 랑게 분 년리야 아니 즉 특수연기 특수시에바이나 양델에 되는 거래랑그래서 아니 민년바 콜라 땀간바 민년바 줘버시에바이나 안델에 되는 거래랑그래서 지산제자 다담다게 시에남로 동아 녀다 특수다 민년 민년시자 미되리에 지산데 디두고 말디 메디바이자 민년바 디두고 말면 델에 도셔도 제바이나 안델에는 셈미기와 이미디와기 셈마기와지 되는 코로랑 그래서 코로기위 기에남 규 되는 해서 숨도 예. That's the Jung Yor, that's Geshe that's Shi.
What is being presented here is in greater detail the causes and conditions for the rise of anger. So here 12 are being presented. So first is a group of 4 in relation to myself or oneself. And that is if oneself suffers, or if oneself experiences contempt from others, or if one is spoken to in a harsh manner, or if one is disgraced. So these are 4 ways in which anger can arise. A second group of 4 is towards those within that we consider part of our group. So most clearly one's family or one's circle of friends, or it really comes down to a group that one associates with, that one feels one is associated with. So if they suffer, or if someone speaks contemptuously towards them, or treats them with contempt, or if they are spoken to harshly, or if they are disgraced, that is a second group of 4 causes and conditions upon which anger can arise.
지사 동아세 수술이야 초와 레가로제 지가리나 지금 마디비토네 강아레지 초와 동아 깨바이는 델라티네네 셈마디와 계시되네 코라기에데 용거로와 지사당은 저기 안데서 아니 생기 니주 제바이나 셈미데와 계시되라야 아니 코라라디 용하데 생기 수습셰바이나 안델라티네 안셈마디와 계시되네 양 코라라야 요바 디네기 민년바 줘바교 구마레 지지큐 디체 소세 윤주지 민년바 줘바이나 안델라티네 셈미데와 교 코라기기 요바 디당서 기디네 디네기 무소 다디소는 저기 냠면 예대바 장야 차거로 어째서 디네기 돈에 아주 미 치수라게 시에나람상 셈마기바샤 되는 코로나 발렌 로야라 소바 용거와 안디네기 다디소는 저기 세고하고야 차기도.
This, I think, is really quite clear because we have all too much experience of this. That, for example, if we are suffering, so experiencing physical or mental pain of some type, then anger can all too easily arise when we are in such an agitated state. Or likewise, if we are treated with contempt or spoken down to, that too can trigger us and anger can arise. Or if we are spoken to harshly, berated, then too anger can arise. Or if we are disgraced, perhaps we are falsely accused of something very publicly, and then from that, anger too will arise. So I think this is all quite clear because we have all too much experience of this.
Jala dele dobe so sile na jawol so da mitimba so ya anjik na mitawa mitimba so ya deniki nyoba ki de ro chi yo ina deniki ga sa chi yo ina dele ya dobe so sile de yin andul ya donga cho donga jona ani yimi de wa ke dele ya khon ke cha ro dene jawola dele doba so mi dungaegi docho so deware 기부를 줘나 네 델레세 마기바제 되는 메가와지 코로나게 so 샤네 소소 마가서 데라 야고 주나 그거 말아 누구 주나 그거로 봐다 되네 되네서 제선 콜이야 네 지 dunga에 잡리야 기부르제 지금 봐네 아니 델레 메가와 기그레스 아니 되네기 더네 코로나 용거레스 지세 되네 녜비 도쇼 미녜바 kasi nyambara kasorda mi tongshon tanya chabliya anshengi kolya tyonga tanya koya kore saya jayabana yang soso mi dewa kigres andela kono langres ane tsikzu so doksho delia an kolya mi shendage tsik jamboda nyambora shigena soso semma kiwa dhamma mi dewa ki dena kono la chagres ane nyembegi ane nyambala ane delia chik tyonga tangwa peya kore saya de denegi ko jamborese denegi chik nyambar chobaina imedewa kigres 제사다 자올라 아니 안줄로 중요하게 독서되게다 자올을 주바이나 아니 소소마 기호용 그래서 니르와다 소소게 지게 자오 마디어서 소소를 미가세 tel야 야고 주나 그거 말에 야고 마주나 그거로 봐다 제사다 니레 도베서 어세디스 제사 니네자 니레 자올라 뒤에 독서 시치되다 중인사지도 전시 시호래
Final group of four is presented in the fourth line, but it is the opposite for those I dislike. So for those we dislike, or one's enemies, for those we dislike, it is opposite. So if they are not suffering but are happy, this can trigger us too. If they are not treated with contempt but with respect, this is something we dislike, and this can upset us. If those we dislike are not spoken to harshly, but they are addressed with kindness or politely, this too we do not like, and we may get upset. Or if they are not disgraced, but say are rather praised or spoken well of, this we dislike as well. So this is the final set of 4, making 12.
아나가서 코로나야기 게임주 데니시네 용거래 사실이 순거래 다디디나네 지나당 언제야 슝 배시찬다 나라 콘르기유 아니 뭐 고세 고로 순거래 고 대가르세네 어다가라 나라 뇌송세네 그야가라 뇌송세세 데네 코로나야기란 거래 나라 뇌송 나라 뇌구둑세네 안델이야 코로나란 거래 아니 마오반 다데 니엘만에 다데네 마네베네 마오반의 혼유기리에서 네버 유로세데 안디네 삼다제 콘랑그리에제 제사는 달라 뇌송스 달라 뇌구두 마오반 달라 뇌버 콘뉴서리 삼제 온두스네 콘랑이에스 다디 숨제 디나시랑 니엘라 녜다 파마랴 뇌송세데 콘뉴버 기소세 콘라야다 데네 뇌구두세다 데네 마음바다 혼자 뇌살에서는 두 삼단의 콘라지 바 콘라기리 게 유로 디네레스 디나지다 자올라 다 도셔 차로다 어 콜라 판다소스 콜라 펜버지 콜라 마음바의 펜버지세데 데네 토네 삼다진데 데네 어다 콘라기에도 용어레스 제사다 콘라기 용어 보고 세데네게 한좀 나네데 숨거래 제사도 나다 지퍼 차고 돼서
So those then are 12, a division of 12 causes and conditions for the arisal of anger. So again, 4 in relation to oneself, and second group of 4 in relation to the group one associates with, such as family and circle of friends, and then wanting the opposite for those we dislike. So in some texts, you won't find a presentation of 12 causes and conditions for the arisal of anger, but 9. It comes down to the same thing, but the division of 9 is those, firstly, in relation to oneself, those who have harmed me, so in the past, those who are harming me, or those who will harm me. This is a group of 3 causes and conditions for the arisal of anger. The second group of 3 is in relation to the group one associates with, so one's family, circle of friends, and so forth, that whomever has harmed them, is harming them, or will harm them. That's a second group of 3 for the potential arisal of anger. And then the third group of 3 is the opposite, but for those that one dislikes. So those who help or benefit those we disliked in the past, the present, and the future. That makes the final set of 3. These 3 sets of 3 make a presentation of 9 causes and conditions for the arisal of anger. So these are 2 different ways to present it, divisions of 12 and 9, the causes and conditions for the arisal of anger, but the meaning is the same. But in text, you'll come across differing ones. Shantideva here presents the 12 division.
네 김전 삼다도 오강 고응할이야 지금 뇌소 지칭할 뇌소 뇌녀의 뇌소 제지 고뇌의 딘딘딘 강아제소 선배가 삼다제 엔디다 당진데래 안에서 수심마게 네 코너란 거로다 야 지금 뭐냐라 나도 어디 결혼에 딩할 뇌기도 뒤지는 결혼할 뇌기도 전에 되내지는 남사 코너라 지용으로다 나도 니마 만여 보이네야 마호반에 딩할 뇌기 기세를 삼제 어디 예래네야 디가 원고가 치도 매버서야 된다리야 코로나지 국대리야 탑시다지 여러 매버서 딩한 중에 당한 코로나고에디 랑고 김전되게 다 삼는 데네스탄에 디숨다는 마도 다 코로나에스 메로 다 코로나에도 지 코로나야 규지 끼엔지 고고로 와다 끼엔지 가는 것은 갈랑아 예마갈 뇌소서야다 네 분야를 뇌소 네 파말을 뇌소서야다 난다 뇌시도다 뇌바들이야 딩할 치수시에서 견주에서 한 통중 다서 세디 뇌디르와다 뇌당들라 한 치수시는 뇌야 애니롱 다는 뇌야 근데 지게 잘라고마고는 뇌야 근데 지게 민년바시는 뇌야라서 봐 뇌당기 릭미도와 여러와다 디네 토네 가르체변 어디네 지성 말에 치수시에서 말에 통중 다서 뇌망한테 두스데 미망비기리야 말 통중 다서 삼다제 되네 코로나야 돼 연구로 가지상 어등이 분야를 드는 시소세다 안디니기 토네 뭐 녀마 제시아바디 삼단의 코로나야다 다등알에 결혼에 등알에 통주 당고도 말이야 네 지게 측수시에도 세네 안디니기 전에 코로나야 안 뭐바나 어디디잉알에 측수시에게 녀가요 나 딜레코 통주 다야게 녀가요래 아sam도 두신 소식이 남도 도고 예전에 되네 안 될이야 안지 마가와 이미대와게 되네 코로나야라서 디니기 제가 유디스 다 되네 공부를 거래 세대 코로나야 유리 디스 용거래 제가다 랑기 미가와 랑이야 지 소식이 미팀바지에 봐네 미델이야 야고를 전하는 소식이 용거 말에 콜이야 강한 채나 가고하래다 도나디르와다 콜 거의 자와람로 야고 중나 한 소식 미디어와게 되네 셈마기와 제 코로나요 거래 되네 콜이야 야고를 중콜 자와람로 야고 전나 한 셈마기와 제제네 코로나요 거래 제가 되네자 먼저 코로기에 끼엔디게 되네 연구를 해서다 도시네 뭐 소야 되디 송거다
So learn these 2 divisions, the 12 and the 9-fold divisions, as causes for the arisal of anger, and look at the role they play in the arisal of your anger. And recall someone who has, for example, mistreated you in the past. And immediately by recalling them in relation to that event, a negative feeling arises. So that's in the class of anger, coming from what they have said or done to you in the past. Or you can then take it to your loved ones. Perhaps someone who has spoken badly about someone that you care about, or they mistreated them in some way. Merely remembering that leads to the arisal of anger in relation to them. Or if you think of, then you think of someone else who really likes this person that you dislike and is maybe a friend of theirs and talks well of them. That person now you also dislike because they are praising this person that you, for reasons which you feel are very good, this person is a bad person. And now this other person is saying, no, actually they're a nice person. You just haven't seen their good side. So we recognize how this is true in our own lived experience, that these are two different ways to present how our anger arises. And it's not necessarily based on what was done in the past. Clearly, it can be based on what's happening in the present, but also what we project will happen in the future. I imagine... All good?
동아 가서 동아 다음에 세바 셰비 값 차대로 지나 고압디 야부존에 결혼에 되는지네 어디네시 용그레선 배 섬가야 말씀에 세바 다들래 나도 쳤는데 어디네 가야 말씀에 세바 다들래 고압 유리하고 사 게노지.
Actually, what's just occurred to John, with John's breaking chair is really quite suitable here as an illustration, in that the unexpected continuously happens in our life. And from this, these are continuous opportunities that we just willingly accept the unwanted that happens in our lives, make the most of the situation, and see it through the eyes of the Dharma, and move on. So, what has come together in this case, what has come together in dependence on causes, eventually breaks, as unfortunately happened right now, and that's okay. And all of us, maybe those of us who are listening to the teaching, suddenly it was interrupted. That's okay. And whatever happens, we can deal with it. It is not beyond us, including being inadvertently thrown onto the floor in front of everyone. And now that this event happened, but we're at a time when you're amongst friends, and all of us, our minds are quite relaxed, it's not a big deal. So this really shows how that if the mind is relaxed, taking on difficult circumstances and them not being a big deal, really happens. Because if the mind is tense, the same incidents can be responded to very differently.
dāndu līmbi sōpa kumyā dhī rēs. Chizān dāndu līmbi sōpa kumyā bāyā na yī mīdewa kīgī mā rē, yī mīdewa kī na anā kōntu kīgī mā rēs. Chizān dīni yīnzā dhī rīyā, tā tī dāndu līmbi sōpa kumyā rē, sōpa dāndu līmbi sōpa sāyā kumyā rēs wā rā. Nā dīni mā dī shūyā rē, tā sōpa dāndu līmbi kumyā rēs yā dhī.
So returning to the 11th verse here, so when the unwanted happens to us, whether it is an experience of suffering or being spoken to harshly or contemptuously or being disgraced, whatever it may be, it's an opportunity that independent on our preparation beforehand, our training in patience, that we can willingly accept the suffering, willingly accept this unwanted circumstance. And by doing so, we guard our mind from becoming unhappy or discontent or displeasure arising. Guard our mind from going in a negative direction, which is the immediately preceding mind of anger. So if we willingly accept an unwanted circumstance, then our mind is not getting upset, and then anger will not be able to follow. So in this way, we train our mind to willingly accept the unwanted, and we guard ourselves from giving rise to anger.
Andi dadeng zule deni tone nye mangalia kanga dine cheso sada mala kanga dine chungwar se deni ge samdane yane yando samdaje andi pe so semma kiwaje pe jima kiwaje andi nyema mitele ya khorlang ndele khorlang so semma kiwacha dendu jine yane do samdade denes jike samno shanadi ki pa tengu shirame bache dine yimu kiedi dine neso mangu yungoro wata dine za dele ya yesa dang zo kasin junju sik dangbo dele ya jingan de dela jusu me dani dela miga ji shas galde jusu me nane dunga dela miga ji shas ya di sam di lapche dire da dine kabla yongba inna da nyema dus cheba de che sa res 제가 다들 두삼 되네 고녀마 중요되다 차차는다 고 대네 가차래 디 소교단에서 가요 말해 저다 소교단에 가요 말해 다 소교단에 매번 찍리야 찍 나중에 디지털에 쌈나다 샘체 제도는 판도 가요 말해 지산 판도 매번 맞아 소소리야 니기 강아지게 녀버지게스 지산 소소 마기바 동아기에 강아 태버려 지산 녀마기 살교도 중차래 될이야 소교단에 가요 말해 아니 대한자다 고 샘제체나 판도 가요 말데 미가와체나 제바디 다데티네 샤바디 미가와체나 소소게 경례 소소라 강아 태워마도 가야요 말에서지 두신 델레미가 지샤스 지산티네스 미가와체나 판도 가요 말데 미가 데네 삼다 미가 지교 말디 냐마데 준소게 파 삼다마당제 몽바나 소소게 되네 마주야게 응고제디 삼다데 계시머레서디 다디 desungore jisadi dati she dida anjuge kasan she galde de la chus mena ne de la migaji sha sha dige ondusine samda dige 판도 침모 이가래 판도 침모 차고로 와다
So what's really important in our mental development and the training of our mind is when we take something like mentioned tonight, these varying ways that anger can arise, and we recognize how anger can arise independent on things in the past, that I can, by recalling something, get upset again. Something that's long gone, but I'm upset again by it. And this should point us towards the great fault of ruminating about past events, holding them in our minds, getting weighed down and eventually depressed by them. By training our mind well in the ways presented in this chapter, we'll be able to leave the past in the past, because we'll come to recognize that there is no benefit at all by keep bringing the past back to my present, keep giving it life again through ruminating about it. By training our mind well, when a memory arises, we can let it go. Not give it the energy of thought, of thinking about it, but let it go. And to do that, you combine what we've looked at here about how the past can be a trigger, a cause for anger in the present, and combine this with what we looked at last week. So in the 10th verse, the verse immediately before this. If there is something to be done, why be unhappy about it? If nothing can be done, what is the use in being unhappy? And the meaning of that verse, as we saw last week, is just this. If there is something if there's a problem and it can be resolved, then there's no need to get upset. Let me resolve it. It may take a while, but getting upset's not going to make it get resolved any more quickly. I just work through the process and eventually it will be resolved, and that's fine. No need to get upset. Or if it's the opposite situation and nothing can be done, well then, why get upset? It's not going to help at all. Nothing can be done. So you take that with what I've just mentioned now, and we recognize that what's happened in the past, whether it was earlier this evening or if it was years ago, it's in the past. And the only way it can have energy in the present is by giving it that mental energy, keeping it alive within me. So let the past go, learn what needs to be learned, and then let it go and move forward. And in this way, our mind stays far happier and we can continue our process of spiritual development.
아직 딜량아도 되게 콘롤라야 다음이 밑에 기야데 몽바나 말라 뇌사리 그 뇌버 교월에 뇌기리 선배가 삼다지 이 밑에 기야다 콘롤라야 지어봐 지사디 몽바 딜량아도 되게 삼다한테 탑지다 여러봐 되게 마야에게 탑람 탑시제 여봐자 되네 탑시제 고레스 지상 갈래 주소에는 델라미가 지지요 지사다 몽바라 뇌기리 가디긴 지지기리 선배 삼다지 셈마기와 제나 근데 강아 가라서네 탑시다 여 몽바나 강아 뇌다 강아 마체디 소수다딘데 탑시다 요 고급 여반자 델레 쥐탑여래 주소 여반자 델라 아디 디 마야게 탑람들의 배수치네 장고레스 마도디네 셈마기와 제화가 말와 소다디 제산디 갈데 주소 연하네 델라미가 지시요 사디 도신다 다디디다 지징이 말에 대신이 말에 지지 오만 로로와 다니마데 마오바나디네 ngal 뉴기레스 맞아 코르기에 될 가르치게도 오당하기 마오바라 그 ngal 뇌사데 ngal 강아 제사데 삼제 디네 삼단도 코나게레스 네 분자다 네녜레 뇌사데 강아 제사데 삼베게 삼다제 디네 이미데와 지 코르기게레스 요 제세 코르기 유디네 지요레스 슈임바 제사 디네자 디네기텔라 안에 마오바네 디네 삼단에 강아 셈마기오지네 강아 카로레스 그래서 델리야 마오바네 디네 두만 마테게 디네 탑람여레 탑시 지어고레스 제사 탑시디 베지 지어올마다 탑시 가야 마제베제 셈 안에 마기오지 되네 안에 이미디어와 콘란에 판도하여 말 제사 델리야 마오바네 강아 마야에기 탑람여레 탑수 베지 탑시 베지 땅고레스 지승고로 받아 갈레주스 연나는 델라미가 지주여 탑시제 베지제 탑람 베지여 와있나 미가와 지고요 말해서.
So in this 11th verse, I've mentioned how anger can arise now, independent on recalling events from the past. And I spoke then how we can use the previous verse, the 10th verse, to guard our mind against getting upset about things in the past, about training our mind to let go of the past and not allow it to harm us in the present. Also now in the 11th verse, we've seen how we can get a cause for the rise of anger now can be our thoughts about the future. So not only thoughts now in the present about the past, but also our thoughts now in the present about the future can get us upset. Now, for example, if we think about someone we're likely to meet later, or a situation we are likely to find ourselves in later, we may well get upset now, thinking about what we feel we are likely to encounter. So in this instance, we recognize firstly, as presented here from the 11th verse, that now in the present, I may get upset about something that I imagine I will encounter in the future. So rather than getting upset, let me apply the logic that was presented in the previous verse, in the 10th verse, which, again, the 10th verse, because we don't have it before us, if there is something to be done, why be unhappy about it? If nothing can be done, what is the use in being unhappy? So when we thinking about something that we are likely to meet, we're likely to encounter, that is likely to be difficult for us, where we'll experience suffering, where someone will speak harshly to us, and so forth. Rather than get upset now, guard your mind through preparing. If there's something that I can do about it, so you think through the situation, how can I respond if I encounter this person or this situation? How can I respond? How can I deal with it effectively? And role play, prepare, plan. And this is a skillful way of preparing yourself for what you imagine you're likely to encounter. And if you do so, you prepared well, no need to get upset. And if for whatever reason, there is nothing that you can do to alter this situation, then again, why get upset about it now? I have to encounter this, I have to endure it. There's nothing I can do to avert it. I can't think of a way that I can prepare myself for it. Well, no need to get upset, because it's not going to help at all. So in this way, we can combine what's presented in this 11th verse and the previous verse, the 10th verse, in relation both to thinking about our future as well as about events from the past, so our imagined future and from events from the past.
Dinezada dinma 저기 코르기 동아 삼다제 동아 단도 렘바 라운드 바치 공고레스 제사 dineza de kom나 도승거래 다 din마 삼다다데 대위 균이 레가 중스 동아 균이 신도 망스 동아를 매버는 예중매 대베 셈케 템버네 네스.
Then, coming to the 12th verse, further looking at this general topic here of willingly accepting the sufferings of samsara, or willingly taking on the sufferings of samsara. The 12th verse, the causes for happiness only occasionally arise. The causes for suffering are overly abundant. Without suffering, there is no determination to emerge. Thus, mind remains steadfast.
저기야 도치나 삼당에도 그랬던 거라서 되게 초와 소설이야 내 나자다 되게 강아지는 초와 동화 중함 되네 미년 바다 치수시에 발라서 바는 시에 소소 이 미디와 계획이 요바나 안델이야 삼당에도 도치네 대서 너 강아지게 바다도란 시바 있나 안에 강아지 바레스 이 미디와 기가 말이 이 미디와 이런 코로 기가 말레스 지다 다도란 거레스 다도 림바 삼다나 가랬던 거라서네 대위균의 제가 좀 쓰는 것도 대화용하게 규디 네 개발에 되는 용거레스 제사당 아주 지팅 코와 봤어요 당아주 코로발이야 대화 용하게 저 코로발이야 대위 규디기 빼 까브리 뉴용마도 요 말레스 그래서 대화용하게 유 개와 두비아디다 공부레스 뉴용레스 제사 대위균의 제가 좀 세제 공부레스 뉴용마도 요 말레스 개와 두비 뉴용레스 보다 개와디 규개와디다 뉴뉴 주바인자 다디 대와디 뉴아이디 공부레스 뉴요레스 다 뉴뉴마디 말치 상가서 코로발이야 대와다 동아지나 게디나 동아데 마와다 대와디 슈충 뉴뉴마디 메레 이 메와데 가라신 개왕 아마기 대위와 윤규디 루비아디 공부 깔레 하고 차대로 와디기리에스보다 대위기데 내가 좀
Continuing in an overall section of the chapter where we cultivating the patience that accept suffering. And this is an indispensable training to engage in, and we've been covering it over a number of verses thus far. And it's indispensable because life is challenging. Life is not easy, and it's not easy for any ordinary beings. And this is what this verse makes clear, especially in the first two lines. So the first line, the causes for happiness only occasionally arise. So this is talking about for us ordinary beings bound in samsara. The truth is that it's rare that we have the opportunity to accumulate the causes for happiness. And because it is that we encounter these causes or this opportunity to accumulate the causes for happiness rarely, it is therefore seldom that we encounter their results. So because we have not been able to create many causes for happiness, we do not experience many happy results.
Devi Gunin, Julia de Calahores, Danzuki Dipene, Servo Community, Calahorwa, Chisan Lelo, Servo Comtua, Lamsan, Servashi Comia, Sisu Sheban, Lamsan Park, Sheda, Landloyama, Servo Comia de Calahawos, and then Yaji Surum Suyati, Calahabo, in the Jimbinium Nenchiati, Calahabo in Zan, Divi, Julia, Calahore, Chisan New Matoligo, Matersus, Madungo Mar, Eka Johnson, New Matoligo, Mareje. Then on the Gewaji Juba in and Kawadi Yachi. 부이다보르치는 조롱의 주숨 차상 상화도 용해야 갈래가죠. 저와 공롱 자유 점도 그래서 신기하다. 근데 내중 개와 침이 삼다 공롱 계제 개와 주에 갈래 하보라 변하는 저기 이제 개와 주디 안지도와 개와 주변에 소설야 강의 체도 강하게 세 된다래야 아니지 개와 주야. 아니 소속이 지금 내가를 제도 내가 되 자월람로 요약이 된다라 삼다제 개와 주야라서 봐. 대군은 되게 체디점이 군농기 송화자 개와 되니 주게 개와 돼 개와 니고 춘주마도 차고 말아와. 안디 개와 주변에 군농 되니 주 개와 주서회지 지금 개와 주에 대한 부이다고 제 용거 말아와. 나지 매바체. 안디 개와 주서나야 개와 대한 친구와 탈바 담지 김고 원 토야게 오와제리 용고 말와 제가 오와데 주 오와데 용고 말 제가 당은 개와 주야라 조와다 뭐주숨 차상 주 차야데 주야데 신도네 갈래 하고 차려로 와 이네 자당은 고 개와 주디 네군원 점도 삼다 탈바단 담지 김고 원 군에 나제 군원 되네 되네 소소의 개와 강도 주 되네 개와 주에서 주 세외질의 개와디 안심제 탐지기도 산요고마 토비치도 모아 제바이나 나 개와디 주롱의 주숨 차상 상외게 개와디 부이다고 아니 개와디 니바 첨부 차고로와 당한주에 되네게 지대나 개와 주바이나 되네게 개와 용야디 공부 휴차고로와 되네자 개위 디비주 개와디게 공부를 갑자기 되었어마도 용요 말에 세대 임세 도시니리에 사지
Continuing with the first line, the causes for happiness only occasionally arise. And there's really a lot of truth in this, in that it's not just that the opportunities to accumulate virtue, it's not that we really encounter opportunities to accumulate virtue. It is that for ourselves, we don't readily recognize the opportunities to accumulate virtue that we encounter. So we miss them, we pass them by. So an opportunity to practice patience is all too often not embraced, not taken, and we respond instinctively, habitually. Or an opportunity to genuinely practice generosity that isn't taken, but rather our habituation to self-interest, to mightiness, this dominates. Or to be ethical, all too often one does what's easiest rather than what is right. So this is where it is so challenging for us ordinary beings to transform our situation, because the opportunity for us to accumulate virtue, we only occasionally embrace such an opportunity. We may encounter them, but we do not recognize them. And then the second part of this is that when we do engage in virtue, the virtue that we as very ordinary beings accumulate from that situation is weak. And it's weak because the quality of our motivation is quite poor, and then our application to this virtuous activity, this can be quite mixed, a lot of distraction, coming back to it now and again, and bring it to completion isn't necessarily something that will come about. We start a virtuous task and we don't finish it. So the various aspects that bring a virtuous endeavor to completion are often either not complete, or they are there, but they are of poor quality. So for example, when we are doing something virtuous, our motivation is all too often dominated by self-interest. So we're doing something to make our lives a bit easier. So we may be helping someone or being ethical or whatever, or being patient, but we are doing so primarily out of self-interest. We don't want the situation to escalate because we don't want to have a harder time, or we want to build up a good connection with someone because maybe we can use that friendship in the future. So in this way, we're doing something which, from most perspectives, is virtuous, but the motivation is really quite mixed. And then in terms of the application, that we get quite distracted, we maybe aren't wholeheartedly engaging in the virtuous activity, and therefore we may not even bring it to completion. So in this way, the quality of the virtue when we engage in it may be quite poor. And then in the end, when it comes to dedication, we may well forget, or we may dedicate very poorly, and in this way, virtue may go to waste or not bring about the maximum benefit, the size of benefit that it otherwise could have. So for these two general reasons, either that we don't recognize opportunities to accumulate virtue and they pass us by, or when we do accumulate virtue, the quality of the virtue we accumulate is weak. For these reasons, the causes for happiness only occasionally arise.
나 동아 균이신도 망스 제가 동아 세야 가서 다 동아 요에 그 규디 미가 와래 되는 주와래 제가다 미게 위게 규 동아 규 미가 와 주야데 배 마세 망보 쉬오래 둠되고 야래 소다 동아 균이신도 망스.
But the opposite is also true. The causes for suffering are overly abundant. So it's all too common that we accumulate causes for suffering. Hence, the results ripen so frequently.
제산당 아주 동아요에 유 미개와데 제왕아마이네다 동아 데네기 지 규디 사야 동아 지 사야게 디버사야데 둠데보레 제산자 측수 컨트롤 준 참아 측수 나캬 안 데네기 세나라 소바 제바다 데네기 토네가 저기 디버사야데 둠데오슈 사고 제자 제왕아마이네 디바 데네기 몽보사와이자 체텔레나 디두게 제보 동아야디 망보야디 데네세 사지 도시나 삼다이레스도 아도 동아 균이신도 마세.
In our past lives, we will have accumulated so many causes for suffering. Therefore, it's hardly surprising that we encounter so many unwanted circumstances. And if we think of speech, how often in this, and certainly in past lives, we've deceived others through lying. We've spoken harshly to others, and we've spoken badly about others. And we've engaged in so much speech that really has no real value to it, it's purposeless. And then, of course, various negative attitudes, such as the self-centered attitude of miserliness, where we're striving for our own needs and do not mind that others experience problems. So we've created so many causes for suffering, hence we meet suffering results, unwanted results, continuously.
다 미개에 사와네 미개와 체베네 미개와 디다 정어 주숨 차상 상와 야고실리 두고래 배나가 저기 지 주인지 셰와 배는 구마시고네 구마구였으면 담보 구마구네 꿀렁 지여래 구마구였으면 꿀렁예 디네 꿀렁 디왕기 전에 구마구 세외질로 톱세외질로 오당할래 톱선다 나 구마구 라선선비 톱로기 뭐라 제가 정어 주숨 차상 상거래 디네 아주 주인지 셰베 나보 주인시에 그 꿀렁 중에 주인시에 왔으면 꿀렁게 디네 주인시에서 오당의 주인시에 차서 직선 선비기 다 시에 차서 선비기 디네 삼리거 제가 디버사야들 정어 주숨 차상 상와 리거 디네 인자 디버디 미 튕게 차상 상와에자 디바디게 뉴바체 차고래 디자 디데고 나 동아디 요아디 뉴와다 신도 제 동아 체와디 요아디 디차고로와.
And in the opposite way to virtue or merit, with non-virtue, we seem to, due to our strong habituation as ordinary samsaric beings, we so easily accrue complete karmic actions, in that we have a very strong motivation. We engage in the activity with focus and attention, and we bring it to completion. And all too often, having brought it to completion, we are thrilled with ourselves. So if we speak badly about someone in a divisive way and the other person agrees with us, we are really quite joyous about it, amplifying it. Or if we see something that we like and we think, actually, I can get away with it, and we steal it, and we're joyful about it, and thereby amplify the non-virtue. So in this way, through our engaging in non-virtue, we seem so much more inclined to it than our engaging in virtue.
제가 덴디게 용그리에서 덴디데 동아 영역의 규덴데 레도와 안데 동아 영역 규덴의 사고 미 대화 영역의 규사야 공부래도 제가다 동아 영역 사이드 둠데르시 망보사투도 제자다 규사반자 디제고 용그리에서 제가 코월이야 코위기 내래 제월린 치제려 코월로 코위기 디월린 치제려야 당한주기 나는 하나주기 동아 영역의 유 덴디기 영역의 규제왕만의 뉴뉴 사와레 사비고 고갑 뉴뉴마다 말아와레 라고와 말에 나 동아 계획의 유 미가 사야디 고갑배 망보 되는 정거 주좀 차상 되는 용거래 되는 자한테 규차상 주사와자 제들량의 동아 용거래 미션기 측수시에 봐야 용거래 아니 민년 바자봐야 용거래 아니 가서래 니지 제바 용거래 선배기 누치는 제부디기 용거래 제가서는 제왕함에게 유튜브 사와인사 제워야지 타셔버려 선배기 누섬다만 레균들이야 이체바 이체 레균에서 레균들 이체바 누치는 삼당고래에서 왔다.
So I encourage you to think well about these first two lines, coming to recognize that this is our situation. This is why things are so challenging for us. This is why we so only occasionally have the kind of situations that we want, and how it's unwanted circumstances or things not going how we would ideally like. Those seem to come about with such regularity. So engage in regular reflection on this point, using analytical meditation, coming to recognize that this is the case, and that this is the case because this is the weight of karmic causes that have been accumulated. We have only on rare occasions accumulated virtue, hence things only go the way we'd like on rare occasions. But conversely, we've accumulated so much non-virtue. This is why we see that our habituation, the ease with which we engage with so much non-virtue, and why all too often we meet circumstances that are not ideal, that we would rather were different. So by thinking about this well in analytical meditation, it will strengthen your trust in the presentation on karma, on causality. And this is of great importance for one to understand our current situation and be determined to change how things are in the future.
제가 디네 삼다이도 다 제자 레다 먼저 강아요아디 개왕아마 레다 뇽 미게와 사비 제부디니 용고래 시선 유사발라디네 제부응마도 유메나 제부디야 말아 유사 사바제 제부디야 타체바래 제가 델야 레균데 타체바레스 제산다 콜위기 코와레 개와 린체젤라 한 데네시네 다 데네시레 선배게 삼다베나 다 안주게 동아시아 버자 세야디 상여점내디 딘시송베 담보 동아시아 버자 세야디 송바나시 데네게 동아이 네수디 용타디 네수 동아디 하고야지 하고 거와 니도나지 차고래 안디마생아들 람림나리아 네 동아 다제제 딘시 공매 담보 또 기부팅의 투모의 삼바체로 로장베 갑라 네 동아기 네수 셰바지 동아디 하고야디 장고 동아 제공지고로 어디서다 니나시레 지바 동아시아바 동아 공부 제공제야디 루제 근데 진짜다 코와레 개와 린치제라 녀만 유사와산 제보 동아디 용거래 제사 되네 자다 제보 미요도 달라 미가 와체나 카르요다디 제부 유즈루산산 제보 요야 타셔버데 미가 와체나 도야게 탑람 탑시 가요 말아봐스 Sidu Deji, Yang Junju de la Galde, and Della Jusumen and Della Miga Jisha said, Dona de some died the Guru Tata Chagore. And Chikaim, Chikartapshika Mare, Stan Migawacha Kaya Mare said, Chitap Kaim Minusebe. That Migawachina Sosa Kamateri Mother Kaim in Wasabe. The delay Karsam does on that day, who read down lay Gusa Savans and Debu to him by that Debu that said Della Junja Debu Minje, Mahobana, then Dungan Moe Chagor, Yawers that the Yawu Junja that mean by the Tudu some bigger, Dine sometimes that down the Lemba Chagorta. That is to do some person down the Lemba Chagor. Down the Lemba Chagor, then immediately get home. Just not do sometimes or that the Gusabare, Gusabi, Jebuja, touch about it. Desada, Gusabella, Jebu, didn't make you a Chakayamar, Jedanta, Jebudi, Gusabi, Jebudi Minje, that in Yonje, and that it go up Yobatilia, Tablam Yobatilla, Dunga Chubaine, Dunga Sege, Tablam Chiyungore, the Zada, that it mean by the Yakuchusha, the Mahomban, the Jebutunga, Yomo, Chagri, that mean by Yakuchisha, and sometimes that the Nigi. Go up till ya Kale Dungada Kanga Karachubi ne the Jegudu Zangi Yamnan Chiati and giving Yamnan Chia Gune Jik Dusene Kale Katine, Ting Shama Chabacheni, Kawaka to the Trugis and be some Damina, that Dunga down the Limbu Sevacoma said, Lucian some down or said it is more that in it, 6 Tamponiti.
Tamponia?
Tamponiti that.
Thinking well about these two lines then will give us a stronger understanding of why things are as they are. And this will strengthen our understanding and our trust in karma. This is of great, great importance. And this ties very well with what we've been looking at and will continue to look at in the weekend teachings, in the Lamrim teachings, on true sufferings. Because when the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, the first truth, true sufferings, the Buddha taught suffering needs to be known. One needs to come to a deep understanding of suffering. And here, these two lines show why we encounter so much suffering and so few occasions of happiness. So this, what we're seeing here, ties in entirely with our Lamrim teachings in the presentation on the training shared with practitioners of intermediate capacity. So thinking well now on these two lines also ties in well with what we've looked at in the preceding verses, in that we understand why things are as they are. And then when we experience unwanted circumstances, when things don't go as we'd like, when we have problems, we experience suffering, we recognize, I'm a samsaric being, I've created the causes for this existence in the past, now I am experiencing that karmic result. Is there something I can do about it? Then let me do that, let me do so. But there's no need to get upset. And if there's nothing I can do about it, well then what to do? There's nothing to be done, but there's no need to get upset. It will not help at all. So in this way, we relate again to the 10th verse, in terms of we willingly accept our circumstance because we understand as ordinary beings, we've accumulated abundant causes for suffering, and now this is the result. If I can do something about it, I will. If I can't, I can't. But either way, there's no point in getting upset. It doesn't help. And furthermore, through training oneself in willingly accepting suffering, we recognize that I'm experiencing the karmic result of past non-virtue, but by responding in a way that is not afflicted, I'm not getting upset, I'm not creating further non-virtue, I'm exhausting these past negative imprints, but I'm not creating new negative imprints. So therefore, I'm bringing to an end suffering, this karmic cause for suffering, but I'm not replacing it with further causes for suffering because I'm not getting upset. So this adds to the understanding, again, from the 10th verse, that if we can do something about it, we do so. If we can't, well, we can't. But either way, getting upset doesn't help. It just makes the circumstance worse. By not getting upset, we exhaust the past negative imprint and we're not replacing it with a new one.
나 증이번이 되게 누가 매번 해주면 내래 심기에 템버네 세디 나가 송거라서는 나 저기야 누가다 강아 체제 누가 체 강아뇨 되게 강아 많이 와다 누가자 하 먹어 있나 근데 내래 코와 내래 타르기 삼방 해주는데 이게 말이에스 제산 코와래 타르제 다 타르비 토고도서 명예준 섬기야 돼 가레스 용거라서는 소식이 누가 냠소뇽 동화 용어주니 왜 되는데 용도 하세면 동화 되는데 도와 되는데 용도 하세면 동화인 예수의 통년에 하고요도 다시 코와 될래다 되는데 동화야데 님보가 민도 하세면 이 중요하데 셈 코와리 이 교와데 얘기돼 이 교와래도 될래다 탈고 우도 셈베다 탈도에 삼방 해주는 기기돼 제사 되네 제사 되네게 동화 중요하데 동화 중 동화뇨 동화에게 내서 하고 빼하고 그래서 되네서 될 때는 코와랭 예중 기대고 가서 이중화되게 되네게 탈도에 삼바 되네 탈베게 고마 토에게 탑되게 삼바 되네게 삼바 예중이 기기도 삼베게 두시네 삼바 삼단제 대시 대자다 되니게 동아 묘하다 되니게 야고도와 되니게 묘바는 소수기 이중기도 이중기 받는 될라든 예중기 투구도 선배 삼다에 있는다 동아 니 동아 초반에 야고도 선배는 당도렘바 차거와 이중화 셈마기바 셈마기와 어다 강아지는 와서 셈마기와 차지로 셈마기와 차나 다다 탈고 선배 탈도 삼바 이거로와 제산 되네 인자다 탈도 삼바기 투그래 되네기 매나 예중 기가 말치다다 되니게 강아치에 동화 될 때네 안에 셈마게와 이중화돼 될 때네 예중 탈바등에 삼바기도 와 셈베기 두스는 삼다제 동화 당들렘 받아 차고래 삼다데 되네자 대베 셈케 템버네 세데 되네 인자세 대베 세데 제사다 코알라 예중 이중 셈마게와 있나 예중 끼기 말에 탈도 예중 끼기 말에 되는 인상 코알레 셈교 강아체 셈교와 끼여도 안 될래 탈도게 삼방 예중 끼기도 와 되는 끼기 요바 인상 셈큐 템버네 세디 셈 결혼게다 삼다 두세 셈기 토네 마도 동아디 다도 랑고레스 동아 다도 렘베 냠내지 쇠바도 공고레스 템버네 세디 템부지 무투지 네 세디 렌세 워다 다운데 구치게 뇌세디마 저 다도 렌세 차고를 제가 다도 렌고레스 되네 금세 삼다제 되네 안동아 다도 렌베 쇠바 공고레 다도 렌제 쇠바 공고레스
First two lines in the 12th verse, these show or guide us to accept that samsara is naturally subject to suffering. Now, the next line shows that there are actually benefits to suffering. So the third line, without suffering, there is no determination to emerge, or it usually will be translated as, without suffering, there is no renunciation. So this presents then the benefits that follow from suffering, which is that by recognizing that samsara is naturally subject to suffering, and doing so with a deep understanding of the subtler aspects of suffering, and with the understanding that one does not have to remain in samsara, one can emerge from samsara, one develops a determined attitude to emerge from suffering, to emerge from samsara, to gain freedom. So by reflecting well on suffering and its origins, one develops a deep disenchantment for cyclic existence. One becomes disenchanted for this continuing to circle in cyclic existence. This disenchantment is with samsara itself. But with this understanding, one also develops this recognition that the fault is not on me, it's on the samsara that has been created. I can break free of the samsara because I have created it. So if I create different causes, I can emerge from the suffering realms of samsara. So by going through these reflections, one recognizes firstly, in the first 2 lines, that samsara is naturally subject to suffering. So therefore, the suffering that I'm experiencing, it's okay. I can accept it. I can deal with it. I don't need to allow it to overwhelm me. But by recognizing that the suffering, I'm experiencing suffering because I'm bound in samsara, I'm fed up with this situation. I am determined to emerge from samsara, to gain liberation, to gain freedom. And that recognition is a joyful mind, because it's a mind that's focused on the future, on the potential that I have to gain freedom from suffering, to gain liberation. So it's a positive mind. And that positive mind then also helps in our determination to willingly accept suffering. And this is now the 4th line. Thus mind remain steadfast. And the sentence should end with an exclamation mark. It's an imperative verb. Thus mind remains steadfast. And what one is needing to remain steadfast in is willingly accepting suffering. To remain steadfast in the face of suffering. And one can do so because one accepts this is how it is in samsara, but I am no longer going to create these causes that will perpetuate my samsara. I am definite about emerging and taking my freedom. So by these unwanted circumstances, not overwhelming my mind, I will continue my spiritual progress to liberation.
That in my Tibetan church, in the Dunga down to Limbu Sibo Yamlin Sungore. Gado Dedan Karnaba, Sedan Jeso Chorwani, Dume Suja, Tarbayi, Dundo Dago Jishir Darus. Tibetan church, so Dunga down to Limbu Yamlin Sungore.
Now we come to the next verse, the 13th verse. So this verse presents an illustration for accepting the hardships of samsara, for not allowing oneself to willingly for not allowing oneself to be overwhelmed by them, but for accepting this is samsara. My experience will be one of abundant suffering. So the 13th verse. Those with faith in the goddess Uma and the people of Karna cut and burn themselves, tolerating pain for no real purpose. So why do I fear hardships for the sake of liberation?
Dönal chofuye dönda deba chechen chuchen jo karji osene ane denegi nyungnya la soba nimba sum la soba deni nyungnya de ne judu chene de deni tamalya deni sosu lu merse che chofuye la soba da ane yanla la soba merse che chofuye yanla je ba do ba chönyi pu che du chene chofuye de yungores chofuores 제가 대속이 초와 대저 denegi 초와 dunga nyungor de 대저기에다 된다 제부 탈바 되니게 탈바 토야기 된다 디 지고르세 탈바 토야기 된다디 주에 탈바 토야요 말레스 매바서 되메 쇠제 제자 탈바 토야 매바질이야 되니게 람로바 삼로 되니게 통하지 아니 즉 최고 부야기 우마발의 최고 부야 된다 랑게 류 메세제 동아 빠도메 용화디 되니게 그런지게 쇠네 아니 고스 디 당도 렌제 아니 되니 지기도 와서 거다 된다 디스피디디레 지고레스 건조기다. 되메지 세대 지가 찾아말 시박이 제가 실례살래. 가도 대다 가나 세다 제다 소원이 되메스의 제세대. 된다 타르바 주비야 요 말에 되니기 되는 고동아 다들래 쇠복 동아 다들래 이제 건조기 도신 쇠치는 지교래서 아주 비리대. 가독 세 di lama uma bala le gore je Deba se Delia, Deba Church and Solasigo. That love you, that love me, that dinner. Dina, the Yum de Ligor, that the Jebachi Hanala.
Okay. So this is an illustration making the point that one can willingly accept suffering and thereby not be overwhelmed by it, because the first line, those with faith in the goddess Uma, or similarly the people of Karna, they have faith. So again, staying with the first, those with faith in the goddess Uma, they, as an offering to this goddess, they will intentionally cause themselves immense pain and forbear with that, tolerate that pain. They'll intentionally cause themselves pain through cutting their arms or their legs, or through burning their body, or through fasting for extensive periods. And they will do so as an offering to this goddess. But what do they get from this? Nothing of real value. They're doing so for no real purpose, because it doesn't lead to liberation from suffering. So they're enduring immense pain, coming through fasting for protracted periods, burning their bodies, cutting their limbs. And for what? They're not achieving their desired wish of lasting happiness.
세발라 소바 되는 소수기 젠드르 냠는지 냠르 전에다 뉴발라 최연도도 젠드르기 토안에 소수기 류세발라 소바 도시네 젠드르 젠데 아니 되는 동안 수요제 젠드르 지고래서 디시고래 세발라 소바 되는 열 보기도 매체 못 다진 되는 막更不 주제 처음 줘야 다 되는 게 젠드르 셔야 디스 세계 있어라.
The second group referred to in the first line, the people of Karna. So this refers to people from an area in southern India. And so these people of Karna, they would, again, as part of their religious rituals, would compete with each other to harm themselves more than others as an offering, as a supposed means to gain liberation. But again, it would not achieve any real purpose.
that pele pete sor dinu du se danda juya meba chilia dunga dini kedu se chi kono su duni chigi duas dunga su gi duas ta ngana zolya tarba yi dendo da go ji shi dar se de so so ge da ngana zo semja tham je ko we dunga ta le tar che ne sang ji go ba tobi chirdu denda je chen bu ji juya ye ba yu go de ji sa dini sa 쇠바 당도 렌제 냠는 제반 자년 제데 semjen 탐지 고유 동아 타달을 주 타르제 야 산지오 고방 토비 치르도 안 되는 개심부 주에 된다려야 아니 지게 되니게 동아 당도 렌바데 다고 지실 다르세도 되니게 다 고세 다니시 오르다 다니 되니게 냠는 제올라 가르치는 시오고래 시나지 옹의 두사 말에 지지제서 시나지 다르세데 시에바시 오르다 근데 달고에 시고요 말에서 올때 지사디 시고에 동아 다도 련냠내 제 시고요 말에 가르선 되니게 다도 련바 있나 디 소수지부 된다 말에 된다 매바 말에 근데 타르바 샘전 탐주 콜베 동아 타달에 타르체 산지오 고방 토베 된다 개심보지 주역이 될에 개체매바 된다 주역치도 되니게 소수게 동아 달랭게 수배 냠내 전에 되네 첨부 개첨부 요래 뒤에서 되네게 수배 냠내 제발라 동아기 다도 렘발이야 시나제네 대치셔화요 말해서 그렇다 마시나 마제바제 다도 렘냠내 제고래서 된다 디스고.
The first three lines then presents illustrations of how these particular people, but we obviously can take it far broader, of how people endure harm, problems, difficulties for no real purpose. But for the sake of Buddhahood, why, now the fourth line, why do I fear hardships for the sake of liberation? So here we can take liberation as being referring to the great liberation of the Mahayana, Buddhahood. So if we have as the goal Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings, so that I can guide each and every mother being to gain freedom from all forms of suffering, why do I fear hardships? Surely I can, if ordinary beings can endure such pain and difficulty for no purpose, for the greatest of purpose, I can take on all problems, suffering, and difficulties. In other words, whatever I encounter, I will not allow it to overwhelm me. Whatever the problem or the suffering or the difficulty be that I encounter, I will not allow it to overwhelm me. There is no need to fear that what I encounter will be too hard. This can be done because I see in the world what people endure for no real purpose. So if I set my heart on something of great meaning, then surely every problem will pale into insignificance.
Dunda Gachimbo Drutudo, Deni Gachimbo Druya Bachilia, Denishin Dangi, Denigi Dunga Dado Lenje, Semjale Pendi Druyashi, Denigi Jematoka Mindus, Denigi J. Tuyagi, and Denigi Yamnation Jews Sembe, some Daje, Gumzin Chembo Yuva, some Daje Dunga Dado, to down the Limpu Yamnichi or Essay, and do Shedoadam.
The conclusion that we come to in these verses we look at is this understanding that I've set myself on becoming a Buddha for the sake of all beings, so that every being that I care about, every being I've ever cared about across all my lives, each and every one, I can lead them to a state where they gain their freedom from suffering. Therefore, whatever hardship I encounter, I can deal with it. It is not too much for me. Or how long this path, this journey takes to transform my mind, how slow it seems to be taking, doesn't matter. I can deal with it. It is not too much.
Kato labgo de karela na sadan lamay medige ma jabi kablia la wanchu gomja de resora katuble ne ba se katuble ne dingis le nyamba sha gomja de res gomja de ba zera katuble ne ba se gore la wanchu katuble ne de res 제사다 katuble gomja de dan sadan lamay ma jabi de den la de gelo robo la wanchu gugu da konzole gugu yo ba zada la wanchu de gomja de ba za di Ganis Gomdroy, some Dadu, didn't Hadige Chazan Suzom, Chick Sondur, Son on the dinner del Hamo, Chick the Yidu, Shindun Zevi, Hamo, Chick down, they didn't want that down by this. I want to down by this, Bomba Zema, the La Zema did that, I want that Gomja, the Lawan to Patan, that. Then you didn't want to call it a charge in Gomle dress on that. Then the Gatuble Doba, the Gatuble Doba delivered. Gom jab de je katul neba gom ja de ba de la lama uma ba di pa pe che ne an ko zal ro du de ne la wa chu de lama uma ba le sembo sho ga che ne de gom ja de pa sha je de chang se jab che nyam du de ba le so re je san katul de lo do ba se do gom ja wa de le pa do je an ji gom de su zhe ju ba de la de ne zan ming lama uma ba le ming katul ka do se ming ta wa de gim zen di re se that conjugue chirubi shung nalia and deniki sungu sarwa jenza katup sade kato sade gimzero kato sade lamu uma bal ming kato lauge gimsen karesene kato sade kares lamu uma bares lamu la kato lawa karesene lawanchuk katubla ne tingis le nyamba sha ba yenza sha de be kabla lamu uma pha chinje dine tingis le chochu bares do bares ba meva che bares urda deneza Again,
it's just explaining this, what we have translated as goddess Uma. So Uma is a Tibetan word. I think the Sanskrit word was something with a D, Durga, goddess Durga. So the actual Tibetan for this is literally reversing austerities. So anyway, so Nagenla is explaining the etymology of this word. So it's not translated. I've just gone with this goddess Uma, but it's literally will be reversing austerities. And Geshe explained it, so I don't know this at all. It's from some non-Buddhist texts that they will have read. So it's one engaged in single-pointed meditation on this goddess Uma, developing single-pointed concentration with a hope to gain a power through developing single concentration to help one in business and warfare and violence. So these kind of very mundane activities, ordinary activities. But because this goddess is not able to fulfill these hopes that one has, one engages in all these austerities to develop single-pointed concentration in order for victory in battle and business, but it is unable to fulfill it. Therefore, this austerity doesn't lead to the desired result. So the word again is like austerity and then reversal. So it doesn't achieve the result. So people then would often push themselves to the extent that they would end up dying. And in this way, this practice was seen as completely purposeless, in that it would harm them in this life, let alone bring them these worldly benefits they thought it would.
Dunga yaya mato dewa yaya kanya mindu achisa dunga yaya yusa sabaya ta dunga yaya jesa dine za dunga di pa dandu lemba che dushine chetile minje juma nyomo ga yakurang sarisibe dandu lemba da du samta dunga dandu lemba sweba kumya dine an dine ge ne gombaya de rowa semjen tam je khore dunga thadale tarje tar바다 탐지 kimyo 고마 토야게 전다 예체 뭐 주투야 돼 dine za dine ge 주야라 등이 안 dunga dandu lemba 동아 쇠바 코메 에마스 기에신 모레샤스는 데네게 토는 가신 구병원에 나들베 쇠바 코모가 두시에서다 데네게 손에 디리도
Very briefly summarize what we've looked at tonight and what to take away for your meditations on patience. So just looking then at the first two lines from the 12th verse, the causes for happiness only occasionally arise and the causes for suffering are overly abundant. So from this we can understand why samsara is so difficult, that we've created so many causes for suffering, we will continue to experience harmful, unwanted results. And we can see our tendency, that how easy it is for us to accumulate further causes for suffering. So we recognize that it is so easy to not only experience suffering, but to continue to accumulate causes for suffering. And how difficult it is to accumulate causes for happiness and experience happiness. This is how it is in cyclic existence. Therefore, there's no point, going down to the 10th verse, to get upset about whatever I encounter. If I can do something about it, I should. If I can't do anything about it, that's how it is. There's no point in getting upset. Rather, I should just willingly accept that this is how things are, because of causes created in the past. But I can bring this, I can change this. So that now back to the rest of the 12th verse. I can emerge from samsara. I can gain liberation. Therefore, now the 13th verse, whatever hardships I encounter, I won't allow them to overwhelm me. I don't need to allow them to overwhelm me, because there are many people in our world who are dealing with extensive problems and difficulties and are not being overwhelmed by them. And they are doing it, though, for no real purpose. I want to become a Buddha for the sake of all beings. That is the greatest of all purposes. And on my journey to get there, I will experience hardships. It's to be expected. It's okay. And I won't allow it to overwhelm me, but I'll accept it and transform it into the path to enlightenment. Then thank you, and we can complete there for tonight. Thank you.